Commission to be held Thursday, September 3, 2015, beginning at 7:15. Council chambers. Our public hearing we left open, so procedurally, what do we need to do here? Excuse my ignorance, but I haven't finished Mark McLean's Robert's Rules of Order book yet that he left me with.
I think
I'm
you're
working on it.
I think you're just about there, Chairperson. Just simply announce that we are reconvening the public hearing from the succeeding meeting.
Okay, so we're going to reconvene that public hearing and receive comments, both written and oral, regarding partial replat of Lot 1, Oak Creek Forest. Do we have anyone here that would like to address the commission?
My name's Christian Offenberger. I was the surveyor for my client. He couldn't be here tonight. And I discussed one thing he wanted with Aubrey already and got that ironed out, so pretty much done finally.
Aubrey, you want to give us the backstory on that? Nick was just telling me what you guys found today, I guess it was.
Well, yeah, probably when we get to the item, we just need to take public comment for this
Okay.
part.
Anybody else, public comment?
I have a card from a Mr. Robert Peel.
Robert? No, come to the
Yeah,
mic
if
so
you
it'll
come to
be
the-
on.
Yeah, I live adjacent to the property, and I'm not sure of the intent of the subdivision, other than perhaps to build, but I can tell you the drainage is inadequate, and if a structure were placed there with concrete, it would, a tropical storm was bad enough, but a hurricane would really be bad. Now, they've done some improvements in the recent year or so, but still, I can tell you that any kind of structure or concrete or development would just exacerbate the problem with drainage.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Sir, quick question for, where do you live?
I am 507 Twin Pines Drive. I'm
Okay.
northeast of the property. My lot is right to the corner of that property. I'm next to the mayor. I live right
Okay.
behind the mayor.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Robert, I think that some of what we're going to hear now from Aubrey is going to address some of that.
When we get to, yeah, we'll close this out and go with our regular meeting, and we can discuss it with the applicant, or with his representative and staff when we get to that item on the regular agenda.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else like to address the commission? Okay, seeing none, then we'll adjourn this public hearing and open our regular meeting with a call to order. First, begin with any communications from the public or committee liaisons. Anyone? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to our consent agenda and approval of the minutes for the meeting held August 20th, 2015. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any comments? Okay. Seeing none, then all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay. Right. Item 4, consideration and possible action regarding the partial replat of Lot 1, Oak Creek Forest. Aubrey, you want to start us off?
Yes, sir. This is a replat that the owner is requesting to subdivide his lot. Previously, there was a detention pond in this area where he's creating the new Lot 1A. There were some drainage improvements out there, and so he was allowed, and the Galveston County Consolidated Drainage District, implemented regional detention, and so he actually purchased regional detention in exchange for being able to cover or fill in this pond, so he'd have more usable property. So he is asking to subdivide this and create a new residential lot. It is going to have access from Crawford Road, and There are some staff comments, just basically clerical items still remaining to be corrected. And we did, after reviewing it at staff level today, had one more comment that we wanted to add, just to, and it's on your updated compliance memo on your computers tonight. That item number 10 would be to update the replat reason to read, to have reference detention use after Reserve A, just for future reference, so that when we see this plat, we'll know what that detention was used for previously.
And the retention is on site now. We'll fill that pond and then they're buying into the,
They'll buy into regional detention, yes. There's a swale going down this portion of the property over here. I don't know if you can see my little cursor. And it goes to Melody Lane to get the water to a regional system.
Mo, can you address the concern that was raised earlier about the potential of additional impervious cover creating some flooding issues going forward? Excuse me.
As Aubrey alluded to, there have been some drainage improvements done from Melody Lane. You may recall about 4 years ago, the city, in conjunction with Galveston County, improved Melody Lane from 2351 all the way to Pearland city limits. In conjunction with that project, 2 additional outfalls were put into place from Melody Lane all the way to Mary's Creek, allowing for direct access into the creek. Those segments can carry the 100-year extreme event flow. Because of that and the improvements made from Melody to Crawford, the homeowners in that area are allowed to purchase regional detentions in Galveston County Consolidated's Mary's Creek system.
And our engineers have looked at this carefully and feel like that that concern of additional flooding for the existing homeowners is
Correct. And this pond, in fact, has been filled in for close to 8 to 12 months. I mean, it's been filled in for quite a while, and the drainage improvements have been in place prior to that, and we've had some significant rain events and haven't had any issues.
Now, was the fill-in, did that take place prior to the purchase of these off-site retention rights?
No, the purchase was made first, and then the pond was filled in. He didn't have to replat, but he saw an opportunity to divide the property for more usable land, so that's why the replat's before you.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Correct.
Is the property, the subject property, is it higher in elevation than the pieces of property around it, or lower in elevation?
It's about the same elevation of the homes on the, if you're looking at the top of the page being north, on the west side of that, of the properties around it to the west, the Forest of Friendswood is slightly higher in elevation than these properties. And the Forest of Friendswood's on the right-hand side of the screen, the east side.
And the fall line on the Forest of Friendswood, though, would be from the back of the lots forward?
Correct.
Yeah. Rich?
No comments.
Arthur? Ally? Tony? Okay. Right. Sure.
What direction does the water drain off of this? Does it drain towards Crawford or towards the front of the lot?
This will drain towards the right side of the lot if you're towards the east, and then collect in the well that runs perpendicular to Crawford, south all the way to Melody Lane.
Okay, thank you.
And those enhancements have already been made. The city has installed some subsurface piping as well as some over-the-top swales.
And how long ago were those improvements made? And since that, I guess we probably had a rain event. And have we had any feedback from neighbors in the area as to effects?
It's vastly improved, and we've heard that from a number of residents in that area. And it's been in place for a year, close to a year now.
Okay. Well, seeing no further comments or questions, I'll call the vote.
Actually, we need to get a motion and a second.
Oh,
Per staff.
for staff. Okay.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion to approve with staff comments. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay. Motion passes. Item 5, consideration and possible action regarding a preliminary plat of fountains at Friendswood. Is the applicant here?
We need to get motion and second first, and then we'll discuss.
Motion to approve subject to staff comments?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor, say aye.
No.
We just did comments.
This chair's available if anybody's.
So, this is a commercial property. You've probably seen it under construction down at 528 and San Joaquin Boulevard. This is a preliminary plat. Their previous plat expired, and my link won't open. But it is a plat with just commercial reserves. They are building a private road that will go from 528 through to San Joaquin Parkway. And then they're proposing to have some, good businesses in there. They're building the road and everything, and like I said, their plat's expired, and we just need to get it, back on the books. I think the owner doesn't really have specific end users, or he's trying to, been working on getting some of those end users to determine how, the lot sizes that they want exactly over there. So, and I believe Sel is here, and he is the agent on that project, if y'all have any questions for him.
So come on to the mic.
Good evening.
Know you guys have been looking at this for quite a while. Are you getting close to a final configuration on the lots?
Yes, we have.
Yeah,
And-
okay.
and that's one of the reasons that we had the original plat expired, because the owner was trying to decide whether 1 acre or 1.5 acre or 2 acres. So we made some adjustment along the 528 lots, and we're changing the lot line to a 2 acre, 1 acre tract. And he's proposing to put up a 2-story, 35,000 square foot retail office complex. And so the current plat on the north side of it, top of the page, reflects that. So, and we're hope to be submitting the drawings end of September.
Good. Anybody have a question or comment for the applicant, or just general discussion? Have y'all driven this? Get a chance to get out and see these plats. It's really, really helpful, it just, to see it on the ground makes so much difference.
You will be seeing this again. This is preliminary plat, so we'll need to do final plat. And then once that plat is recorded, then we can issue permits for them to start actual construction of the buildings themselves.
Okay.
So we'll do preliminary plat, final plat, and then site plan approval, and then they'll get building permits.
Yeah. Arthur?
Sir, just so I'm clear, you're going to build the buildings and then you're going to lease them out, or are you selling these buildings? I'm not clear on what you're doing.
It's a combination.
Okay.
We have right now, out of the 18-acre tract, 7-acre tract you see behind with the large shape is a reserve for detention pond. Subsequently, we have 10 acres left, which are divided into 7-acre tracts, 7 reserves. And out of that, all of them are for sale. And we have talked to a couple of restaurants. There's a couple of individuals looking to put a sports facility, but nothing binding. And then we have a group that approached us to do assisted living to the rear. But while those are under negotiation, the current developer have decided to take 2 acres out of the 10 acres and build a retail office building for himself, which he intends to lease out.
And it doesn't front to 528?
It fronts to 528. It's right next to the church.
Okay, okay. And the assisted living, that, from a zoning standpoint, works inside, because this is...
No, if the end user are serious, then we will come back to do a PUD. We will request a PUD to consider for assisted living. It's not allowed by right. CSCS is zoning, but it's permitted under special use. PUD. And we will be looking at the lots behind, adjacent to San Joaquin Boulevard area, not fronting 528, but toward recess toward the pond.
So not frontage.
No. One other issue's been is we've talked to a couple of daycare and we don't have a taker for commercial because it's so recessed back from 528, so.
Okay. Because I know we've had some sensitivity from the CEDC, for downzoning, but I think their concerns primarily are frontage tracks. Do they have a depth attached to their?
Or which I would assume would just be frontage. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no, I don't know that there's a depth requirement, and typically their recommendation for, you mentioned the downzoning would come in the event of rezoning. And that's when they would get involved and go ahead and provide their recommendation, similar to what P&Z does whenever a rezoning gets decided by council.
Tony, you were there for quite a while. Is it attached to depth or is it just attached to zoning? A downzone?
Repeat the question?
I know you were on CEDC for
Right.
several years. I'm trying to think, is it primarily just about a CSC going to something that is residential? Or do they have an identified depth that, they're not worried about once it's past 300 feet or whatever?
I think CEDC is going to want this to be all commercial, if that's what your question is. So you're saying just the frontage to be commercial and the rear to be something else?
Yeah.
No, I think they consider all the property to be commercial.
Okay.
I do have a question while I
Sure.
got the mic on. Lot E2, how did you propose egress to that lot?
There is a, I can show it to you guys. Right at, between the lot D and E, there is a 24-foot ingress egress aisle that goes from the
Yeah,
private road to it there.
so they would have to cross lot D2.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Item 6, consideration and.
A vote.
Okay. So, yes,
I was gonna make a motion to approve.
okay. I have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
We already have a motion and a second. We just need to call the
Motion
question.
and a second. I knew that. All those in favor, and let's raise our hand because we had a bad count a while back. Raise. Aye. Those opposed?
Can I get a clarification at this stage? We're just voting on just a preliminary.
Just the plat.
It's just preliminary plat.
I'll vote I'll approve it. Vote aye.
I think that was unanimous.
Yes, 7-0.
That's good. Okay, item 6, consideration and possible action regarding the final plat of Sterling Creek, Section 2. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
as amended by the staff.
Second.
I have a motion to approve as amended by staff and a second. Any discussion? Questions? Is the applicant here? Okay.
I don't think so.
Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye. Raise your right hand.
Aye.
Okay. All right. None
So is that,
opposed?
everybody is voting for?
You might have to go 1, 2, 3, raise your hand.
I was doing better at home.
Does your wife make you raise your hand?
Always got the right one up, yeah. Okay, I believe that was unanimous.
Yes, I have 7-0.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, item 7, consideration and possible action regarding commercial site plan for Clearwood Business Park to be located at 4370, 4380, and 4390 FM 2351. Aubrey, you want to give us a little bit of the backstory on this?
Yeah, can we do a motion in a second first?
Yep,
and then
we
discuss?
can. Do I have a motion? Motion to approve,
Second.
Second. We have a motion to approve and a second.
Okay. So yes, this is, if you remember, we had Clearwood Business Park plats that you've seen recently. And so this is a site plan for the rear tract. And it's actually going to be 3 separate lots. They are zoned light industrial. They are office warehouse type buildings. The front one actually falls within 300 feet of 2351, so it is subject to the community overlay district requirements. So the facade on that building is going to be a little bit different than the other two because it can't be metal if it's within the COD. So they do meet all the requirements. I think we actually do not have any staff comments left on this one. So it's been a long time coming, but we're making progress.
And this went dormant, and we re-upped the plat, and
Yes, they started developing this property back in 2007, 2008, and ran into some hiccups with Exxon and had to negotiate some easements and things like that. So Mike and Glenn are here. They're the developers of this. If y'all have any questions for them, they're available.
come tell us about your project, if you would.
My name is Mike Wallace. Me and my partner Glenn bought this property back in 2007, and like she said, we ran into some easement issues, and then the market kind of dipped as well. And so during the time we were working through those, it was kind of a blessing, I guess, to a certain degree. But anyway, the front part of the property is zoned for what is the zoning?
CSC.
CSC for office or retail. Back part zoned industrial, like many of the tracks along 2351 there. So we've got 3 office warehouses. We've built this type of stuff in other parts of the city, some in Humble, Tomball, those type of markets, and they've been very well received for small business owners who kind of want their own freestanding building. And so I think the market is reluctant at this point. I don't think we're ever going to get it done, but we've had real strong interest. If we could ever get something coming out of the ground, which I think we're getting close, I think it'll be very, very well received in the marketplace.
Got a lot of dirt spoils on that property. Did they come off the track itself, or and maybe I'm just?
I don't think we took any dirt out of this.
No, it looked like you brought some in.
Yes.
Okay. And did
We
that
took
come?
most of there's a detention pond there, so that dirt was taken
Okay.
out and spread throughout the site. We'll bring, more dirt in for the building pads, obviously.
I got you. And what, if I could ask, what kind of issues did you hit within Exxon in that corridor?
Well, we're in the Webster Field, as you know, and there's pipelines all across it. And, normally when you go to buy a piece of property, you get a title report, you get an environmental survey, you do your homework, or you get bid. And we did all those things, but the title was misinterpreted. And, there was a drill site on portion of the property. There was an access easement on the west side of the property, and there was an easement across the front of the property. And it was basically used to access that drill site. It also had an abandoned pipeline in it. And so we were successful in getting Exxon to waive those easements because they're not going to drill there anymore, although they haven't waived the site yet, but someday we'd like to see them waive their rights to that drill site.
Did you end up negotiating with Denbury, or was it still Exxon?
We had it before Dunbury.
Okay, so all that was done before Denbury took ownership of them.
Good. There's a couple of other tracks in that immediate area is why I was asking. I'm just wondering what kind of things they might hit over there, and if Exxon was accommodating on it. So that's good.
Well, it took them a long time. They're very slow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they did work with us, but it was a slow process.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I do. You have a proposed drive, 20-foot, 23-foot. What's it going to be made of?
That drive is in place, right?
It's already there. What is it? Is it concrete, asphalt?
It's concrete with curbs.
With curb?
Mhm.
Just again, out of curiosity, do you have natural gas back there, or is it? No?
Not to our knowledge.
So it's all going to be electric heat? Are these pre-engineered metal buildings? Is that what?
Yes.
That's all I got, thank you.
Rhonda, anything? Okay. Hey, Aubrey, just for the commission's sake, since this is our first time to have additional requirements because of the overlay district, could you kind of tell what they're doing? You mentioned bricks, but I think it goes a little bit further than that as to what they have to do in that overlay district they would not have to do if they weren't.
The overlay district does require, the facade, no metal, no wood, and no cement fiberboard such as hardy plank. Earth tone colors, it's additional landscaping, which you can kind of see the landscaping's a little thicker on that lot than the others. And basically underground utilities.
Fenestration?
No, that's downtown district.
Downtown, yeah.
So that's pretty much it.
Okay. And just back to the applicant again, were those additional requirements, difficult for y'all to meet, or?
Well, I mean, actually, in our original economics, it wasn't in there, but we found a way to make it, it's gonna be the first building, and so it ought to attract a little, premium, so, we think it'll work.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Are they pre-leased?
No.
No. I see you still have a portion of existing drill sites, so they could still drill there?
They could, there's a wellhead back there.
Okay.
And they would re-enter it, but it's not on this portion of the drill site.
And it's not producing right now?
No.
It's just, is it plugged or?
Yes, plugged and abandoned.
So there's not a wellhead?
Well, there's an old, I don't, maybe my terminology's wrong. Casing.
Just casing stub?
Mhm.
Yeah, so they probably won't ever re-enter it unless gas prices go to $20 a year. What kind of tenants do you expect to have in here?
We've had everything from engineering companies to, small roofers, air conditioning companies. We had one of these buildings sold before to an air conditioning company before we discovered the title issues.
I see.
And so sports facilities, sports training facilities,
Right.
stuff like that.
So you're going to sell them or you're going to lease them?
Lease them.
Okay. Okay, that's all from me.
Okay, good. Well, good luck.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second.
I got a question for the city.
Sure.
I guess, Marge, you'd be probably the right person to answer. No sidewalks, pet peeve a little bit. I guess it's not required here, but I see,
The sidewalk has already been installed on 2351, so that's their public right-of-way.
right?
So it's only required back there, or up at 2351,
So there is no pedestrian sidewalk to this property
right,
and not required.
right, because it's a private driveway going to the back of the property.
Well,
Aubrey answered it.
she always does. Okay, well, we have a motion and a second, and so everyone that is in favor, if you would say aye and raise your right hand. Aye. I think that's unanimous. Okay, item number 8 is on the agenda because we had a really lively debate last time in regards to sidewalks and the sidewalk fund. Spent a little more time this week thinking about this, and thought we might just spend some time discussing a bit. Kind of the overview of this is, as just an advisory committee, effectively what we do is we look and sometimes we say this is something that we feel is important, and at some point we take that to council. Because of lessons learned over the last 8 years, I've kind of become convinced that before you take it to council, one of the best things to do is to perhaps workshop with them and just say, this is something that is of concern to us. Do you have any appetite for it? Case in point being the single-family residential estate. In that case, I believe our mayor actually was the one, Dave Smith at the time, that proposed that we go in and effectively take subdivisions that had lots that were 2 acres or greater, I think was the minimum, and lock those down in a form where they could not be further subdivided. The fear being that someday land would get so valuable, for instance, on Coward Creek Drive, where you have a lot of expensive homes, that somebody would have a 3-acre tract there. They'd run a private drive down one side of it and cut 8 condos. You did not have deed restrictions that were really enforced and would be able to stop that. So this was with a view of getting ahead of that possibility. And that was brought to council in a workshop format. Council basically looked at it and said, we don't really have any interest in doing that. The folks on planning and zoning that really were enthusiastic for that then went on and put together a group that went out to all of these homeowners associations and talked to each one of them over, I want to say it was almost a calendar year that they were working on it. I mean, they really spent some time on this, got reasonable level of consensus out there. It wasn't 100%, and then brought it back, drafted language with the city attorney, and brought it before council, at which time council looked at it and said, you know, we really don't have any appetite for this. And it was really a bitter pill for the 2 individuals in particular I know that were advocates of it. And but to council, in council's favor, they told us at the outset in that workshop that we don't want to do this, or we'd rather not pursue it. So that's just give you something to think about as to how this works. And but even more basic than that, just as we sat and talked last week, a lot of things were surfaced as, you know, the memories came back as to why that was put into place in the first place. We had a couple of problems that it was meant to address. One were bar ditches. Case in point, at that time was out on Winding Way. Memorial Herman had a office building on the way to Winding Way, and there simply was not right away there adequate to put in a sidewalk. And it was really awkward. And so that was a commercial situation. The other was that the thought was that Friendswood has traditionally been a subdivision of large lots. We've almost gotten down exclusively now to 90 by 130s or less, mostly less, unfortunately. But there was a hope that the Coward Creek type subdivisions, the Rancho Viejos, the things that really make Friendswood unique as compared to other communities, that somebody someday might develop one of those. Now, I personally feel like that is not likely to happen, but you know, that's just my opinion. It doesn't mean that somebody else wouldn't put that together and make it happen. And so when you've got a 120-foot wide lot, that's a lot of sidewalk. Plus, typically those developments are on bar ditches, and the bar ditch itself usually takes up the majority of the easement. And so you not only have aesthetically a sidewalk that looks a little bit out of place on those acreage properties, but then you also have the awkwardness of where you put that sidewalk because of the existing bar ditch that is usually accompanies this kind of development. So all of that said, I think what I'd like to do, if we could, is just spend a few minutes and really drill down as to what it is we would like to accomplish with this. And I'm not saying, you know, I'm not in favor of it. I'm simply saying let's look at what it is we want to accomplish before we even talk about maybe bringing it in the form of a workshop to council, and make sure that what we're bringing before them is actually going to address our major concerns. And I kind of want to direct this a little bit toward Tony, since he was the one that has done a great deal of research on it. And in thinking about the things that Tony has mentioned, for instance, really poor student access to safe walking conditions to our schools. High school being one, they've got to go down Falling Leaf. There's not a sidewalk there, and that's a scary place to walk with a bunch of 17-year-olds that are texting while they're driving, and there's no sidewalk to get out of their way. Greenbrier right in front of the school, goes down your direction. Then also we've got Falling Leaf, Spreading Oaks over to the junior high. And so those three in particular come to mind. Tony, are those the primary things that brought this to the surface for you?
I have a hard time telling whether this light's on or not. Okay, it's on. To answer your question, no, it's not primarily the students driving. It's neighbors. When I was on CEDC, I had a lot of property owners, and I asked them what they thought was good about the city, what I thought was wrong, and I know you sat through some of those meetings and presentations that I've made, and the consistent thing I heard from a lot of the public and property owners was the lack of sidewalks and how it just seemed not to be, no forethought was put into it by the city. And then when that started coming around and I started driving down the road, and it was obvious, you're right. You go down, this sidewalk goes to nowhere, and you have to cross over the street to get the sidewalk again, and you have to cross over to get over the bridge. And then I started saying, well, let me do a little more research, called the transportation for the school, and they said, yeah, it's a major problem. And it is, it's a detriment to our students, and we need to do something. So to answer your question specifically, it came from the public, and what I want to do initially is try and stop more of it, more construction without sidewalks, and then try and find a solution to the areas that don't have sidewalks where we're jeopardizing the welfare of not only students, but we also have a lot of elderly, we have a lot of retirement communities, and we also have people that are in wheelchairs and disabled, and they don't have reasonable access on the streets, and they can't drive typically. So I think it is a problem within our seating. I think it's within our means to address and resolve.
Okay. Well said. In that being said, of course, realize that if we did end up with an ordinance that absolutely required it going forward, and we took away the flexibility of the sidewalk fund and that sort of thing, it will not retroactively improve the areas that those neighbors, I assume, are talking about, would it?
My understanding would only be future construction. The city probably better answering that question. But
Right.
if we change the ordinance now, it'll only affect future.
That's correct.
Correct?
I guess question to Commissioner Tony over there. Is there something that we can change in the current ordinance that would make this better, or can we just adjudicate these as they come through for approval using the current ordinance? Does it meet all the requirements that you feel we need to meet? And if it doesn't, what would you change?
Well, specifically, it was on the screen a minute ago. We're referring to our city sidewalk ordinance, section 70-64, and I was proposing to strike option number 1, or item number 1, which is the exception, which basically just says that the single-family residence and single-family residence E, where open ditches are approved, they can be exempt from providing sidewalks. And I understand that the question was, well, we don't want to box ourselves in, so option number 2, which gives the discretion to planning and zoning in a case of a unique situation, we'd have the authority to approve the absence of sidewalks. And if, I don't know if you're able to scroll down on the screen for everybody, but problem, I think it's number 5, and it's not in full on that screen for some reason. But number 5 basically was the opt-out, putting the funds in the city management, the sidewalk opt-out fund. I was not proposing specifically to delete those or amend those, should I say at this time. Did I answer the question, Council?
Let me ask another question. Yeah, you did answer my question, but let me ask another question. If we were to delete item 1 and make that recommendation to council, would that satisfy the issues that you brought forward from the public, their concerns specifically in regard to school safety and those types of things. And do we know where those properties are, and that by deleting this exception, we would prevent school children from standing out on the road or whatever they do?
No, that would not prevent that or remedy that. That is just to stop it from perpetually, stop the continued growth of development without sidewalks. It's a stop. We stop, when you have a problem, the first thing you do is stop making more problems. So that striking that one sentence would stop making more problems.
I guess I'm trying to figure out
I had
what we're going to solve. For example, you go to the end of Wilderness Trails, there's a neighborhood back there, you know, and they've got ditches back there and all that. By putting sidewalks in there, we're not affecting any student that's going to and from the school. And so if another development came in like that and we made it mandatory that they put sidewalks in, would we just be affecting the cost of their project, or would we be improving public safety?
Would we be, I think you would be doing both. I think you'd be probably driving the cost up of construction, but also minimizing future damage. I mean, to answer your question, I think I know where you're going, and I'm going to take liberty of kind of going there. The next phase, this is phase one, which is the stopgap. The phase two would be, it's within this committee's responsibility. We'd look at the CIP or the capital improvement projects, and we would make a different solution to that to try and address the absence of sidewalks. But making an ordinance is not going to resolve the absence of sidewalks.
I guess where I'm coming is trying to make it understandable, because if you're going to take this to council and you want council to be interested in this, and in the past they haven't demonstrated that interest, I think you have to show them where this is going to apply and how it's going to improve, you know, our public safety, the safety of our children, and all those other types of things. And right now it seems to me that it's a little random, that we could we could make these changes to this ordinance, and people could go out and have a construction project, and where they're building their subdivision, it wouldn't have any effect at all on public safety.
I'm not quite understanding. So if you're telling me that you have a piece of property with a sidewalk, it's not improving public safety? Is that what I heard?
Well, I'm trying to get back to the original complaints that you were bringing forward from the public about we need sidewalks so our kids could get on and walk to school and all that, you know. And if your subdivision is out in the boonies, and you know, and the kids are being bused from there, sidewalks might not make that big of a difference. What I'm trying to figure out is, what is the overlay when you overlay this on the future development of Friendswood? How can you demonstrate that it adds enough improvement in public safety so that you get the council's interest? Otherwise, I think we could do a lot of work here, and we're going to go forward to council, and council's going to say, I don't get it, we're not going to take it up.
And maybe another, I hear what Craig's saying, maybe another way to approach this is just to kind of rephrase the question. What is lost potentially by doing this? And maybe, Aubrey, you have thought in your musings, what could potentially be lost as you kind of game this out, that if we struck number one, for instance, just that narrow part?
Well, I will say I think it would cause, if you look at this list of subdivisions that we've done in the last several years, aside from your subdivisions that are built by builders, Sterling Creek, Dominion, Hunters Creek, we've had Seminole Haven, Jenkins Estate. I mean, those are 1 and 2 lot subdivisions that people are just wanting to subdivide and build their kids a house. And, if we adopt this new regulation, when we come in and create 2 lots like that, we're going to make them put sidewalks that go to nowhere. There's no unless we do adopt some kind of CIP plan or something to go back and install all those sidewalks, we're gonna get a lot of complaints from people just subdividing 2 lots and making them put sidewalks in, and, their neighbors don't have sidewalks. And, if we don't have that tool to, implement that plan, then, it may be.
And the reason for that is because we've got such a long-running history of not requiring sidewalks on open ditch.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it's,
that's
yeah,
what
that's all of,
would make those properties look odd.
yeah, I mean, that's all of, old Friendswood, that, is the way they were built back then. So, and I will say too, that I think that you either have open ditch, streets, or you have curb and gutter and sidewalks. You can't do open ditches and sidewalks. Our right-of-way, widths aren't wide enough for that. So even for the city to go back and, cover up all these culverts and, install drainage, we'd have to do all that and install the sidewalks on top of that.
I have a suggestion, and it's actually per our last bond election. We're trying to strategically place fire stations. And what we did is we drew a 2-mile radius around each of the fire stations and see where did those circles overlap and where do we have big gaps. And if I recall correctly, school bus, if you're within 2 miles of the school bus doesn't pick you up. So what if we started out with our elementary schools like Klein, Westwood, and did the 2-mile radius, because those are the kids that aren't being picked up by a bus. And I think it's called, I forgot what the program's called, but go back and say, let's start here with the sidewalks coming from the schools out and then go from there. I think that might be a little more sellable to council versus stopping future, because I think a lot of these areas that we're talking about, school buses come and pick those kids up anyway. So that's just a suggestion.
And I think it's a great suggestion, and it was worded exactly like that in this sidewalk initiative that I handed out last meeting.
So I have a question about the ordinance, and if you removed item 1, give to me now the interpretation of item 2 in the situation that you just described, where you subdivide a lot, and how does item 2 come into play in that situation?
Item 2 is, I guess, somewhat of a variance mechanism for the commission. So in instances like on our commercial properties on 528, that have the big bar ditches, it's TxDOT right away, and it's not practical, for them to install the sidewalks. That's, the variance mechanism.
As the same thing as item 1? So to me,
well, item 1, like if somebody builds a new, subdivides a lot into 2 lots that are single-family residential, 120 feet, they don't have to put in sidewalks with that exception.
If item 1 is not there,
right,
then council, somebody has the option to invoke item number 2. So the property owner could come and say, I want an exemption under item 2.
correct.
Okay.
So
That's what I wanted to
it
understand.
gives discretion,
Yes.
is what it does effectively. But we're talking about A and B, right? Not 1 and 2?
Yes.
Okay, Scum.
I
No,
think
it's in a different, it's in 2
she's-
places.
Oh,
In
up-
one
up
place
higher,
it's
it's 1 and 2,
and
yeah.
one place it's
Okay,
item B.
gotcha.
The other thing I would want clarification on, I like the suggestion of looking at areas, moving to maybe the phase 2 of the suggestion, and looking at areas where you want to make capital improvements on sidewalks. My reading on school busing is it only applies to Friendswood High School, and there's very specific areas where busing is not allowed. Everywhere else you can be bused. So we need clarification on the busing requirements, if that's the guise under which we're looking there.
Aubrey, I'm wondering if, give you an assignment, ask you to take an assignment. Again, I really feel like driving out and seeing El Dorado. I'm thinking of places where people have 5-acre tracts, and they might want to split. Billy Wynn, 10 years ago, split one out, I believe, for Sun out there. That would be then, the Wynn Estates would have 300-foot sidewalk on one piece of it, and the balance of it wouldn't. Got a 8-foot deep bar ditch in front. It would be a bit of an oddity. Could you maybe piece together a little list of addresses and shoot it to the commissioners? And maybe prior to our next, because I'm thinking that we need to discuss this, but I think we need to discuss this with some pictures in our minds. Could you shoot us some addresses and let us drive out and look at that and envision how this ordinance would play out in the real world?
Sure. I can get pictures and we can look at a PowerPoint presentation at the next meeting if you want to.
Okay. What do y'all think about that? Does that seem reasonable?
I don't have, I'm happy to go look anywhere, that's your guidance. It's not hard for me to visualize a dead-end sidewalk that, you know, would lead to nowhere. That might be created by this situation.
I'd like to give you a big tract of land in our city that does not get bus transportation, because if that's a nerve, I'm going to go this 2351 all the way down to 528 to Sunset to Brazoria County line. School bus does not pick you up.
Right. Howard, Chigger Creek.
That's a big chunk of land.
2351, 518 intersection.
No, there's
it's
2350.
Sunset, 2351, Chigger Creek, the Brazoria County line. That box does not get school bus service to Friendswood High School.
Okay.
And
how,
then there's an then the
how would this ordinance help that though, since that's all platted and finalized?
No, he's just talking about the area potential capital
it's not-
improvement. Is that what?
It's not, this is not a small issue, it's not a small problem, it's not like just one or two little streets. It's a huge area that does not have continuous transportation for pedestrians. And and we're forcing students to make their own way to school within that area. So, no, you're right, that particular ordinance change would not fix that, but we're talking about phase one of my proposal, and phase two would be the CIP change, or the CIP proposal to council, all of which has to be approved by council. I don't understand, what's the only example that we were given to not change or delete or amend number one was that if you had a single plot that had wanted to subdivide. Well, we have an option to opt out of that. So we're not boxing ourselves in by deleting it. But what we don't want is a huge subdeveloper, and there's huge tracts of land in the city, to come down and try and make another Forest of Friendswood perhaps, and have no sidewalks.
But I don't think that's possible, and I think that the box that you described is fully platted and developed.
I understand. We're talking two separate issues. I apologize.
No. I was just going to say the box that was described is the area around Friendswood High School that has no bus service.
Right.
There is on the north side of Sunset, there is another box, Sunset 2351, 518, 528, that has bus service, but the walk to the bus stop could be as much as 1/10 of a mile. That's what I found on the school transportation website when I was trying to understand the issue of where can you be bused and not be bused. So there's nothing that says the area around Friendswood Junior High, if you live close by, that you can't have bus service. The bus came by and got my daughter, and we were well within walking distance there. So I was just describing that area as simply that area does not receive bus service to Friendswood High School.
Okay, and I can see how the CIP part of this could help, since it's completely platted and built out, but I don't see how one moves us forward anymore. Nick, you had a thought?
Yes, sir. So as a matter of example, we have roughly 1,260 acres of residentially zoned property left in Friendswood that has not yet been developed. Let's say, again, as a matter of example, we have a developer come in and want to put in 120-foot lots, estate-type lots in Friendswood, wherever it is in town. Doesn't really matter. Essentially what you're doing is, if the desire is to have lots on these if the desire is to have sidewalks on these 120-foot lots, you're basically asking them to choose to have sidewalks with curb and gutter or no sidewalks with a ditch, because you can't have both. You can't have an open ditch and then ask them to put sidewalks on private property behind it, because somebody has to maintain those sidewalks. In order for the city to maintain those sidewalks, either it needs to be in a right-of-way, or we have to have some kind of an agreement with the developer or the HOA to go on private property and maintain those sidewalks. So the way the ordinance is structured right now, there is a certain degree of flexibility in that if someone does want to come in and put in a large lot subdivision in the future, they have the option of doing an open ditch, knowing that sidewalks won't be required, and quite frankly, sidewalks couldn't go in anyway. So if we were to say in the ordinance, and we were to strike the section that says that sidewalks shall not be required in SFR, then what you're basically telling a developer is that no matter how big you want your lot to be, you're gonna have to close that ditch in and put a sidewalk in. And that is gonna have an impact on the developer, and just as a matter of reference for the commission, it's something that I know that we at City Hall are gonna hear about. And it would be, I think, in a unique situation to have such a large lot and require sidewalks.
And I think that really gets right back to the foundation of why this was put in here, was we did not want to, by ordinance, create a funnel that moves the developer continually toward that 90 by 130 curb street.
And I'll give you another example, something else in the code that we've discussed at the staff level. A number of years ago, I think it was in 2008, there was a provision to create a sidewalk fund. And basically what that sidewalk fund did was allow for a developer who had a hardship, couldn't build a sidewalk out there, to go ahead and pay into a fund where later on that money could be used to create a sidewalk when it was feasible. That again was also done in the interest of flexibility. Most recently, Masa Sushi took advantage of it a few months ago and asked the Planning and Zoning Commission to pay into the fund, and P&Z granted that. So not saying that it's necessarily a bad idea. I'm not making a judgment call on that, but I think from a staff perspective, when a developer comes in and talks to us, that ordinance change would require city staff to tell someone who wants to build 120, 150-foot lot that you have to close in your ditches and you have to put a sidewalk in there. That may be a make or break decision for a developer. So I want to throw that out there. I'm not trying to rain on the idea, but I want to throw that out there.
Thanks. I know in Field Creek Forest, those were 150 by 150 lots, and I think there were 52 of them total. It was open ditch. There wasn't a sidewalk required. Little by little, the homeowners, because they were such small, absolute square lots, they filled them all in and put in a great expense. I think it was, $8,000-10,000 per lot, and they slowly did that. And I don't believe there's a single open ditch left in Field Creek Forest. The only difference was in Field Creek Forest, because they knew they were going to have open ditches, they did a little side 3-foot. It actually had pavers to kind of separate it, give a little rumble zone, in your car before you got over onto it, and actually colored that piece of the sidewalk separately, so people would have to walk. So maybe it's not the best example, but
I have a statement on
yeah.
I think it's wrong to put developer before the citizens. So whether the developer can afford to do it over the citizens' needs or the welfare of the citizens, it seems like a no-brainer to me. It seems like a bad choice to go with the developer.
But Tony, just to kind of pick at you a little bit, the citizenry at large has said what we really loved about Friendswood when we came here were these large lots. So, you're almost looking at, you have to look at the citizen that's right there that doesn't have a sidewalk versus, the 38,000 people that have, liked the city because of those large lots. That's just a counter thought. I'm not advocating it. Okay. Rich?
I just want to make a couple comments. You said that we're forcing them to do it, which we don't. We still have discretion, if I'm not mistaken. We still have discretion to say, you know what, you don't have to put a sidewalk there.
Not on an open ditch.
So that's why I'm confused by number 2.
If you go back to your when you strike item 1 or item B, whichever one you call it, you still have option 2 or B, which says sidewalks may not be required when in the judgment of the Planning and Zoning Commission, safety of pedestrians does not require such sign. So it's still our discretion at the end of the day.
And right now, I mean, if we change this, when we have somebody and, they come to a DRC and we have a development meeting and tell them, you may or may not have to put in sidewalks. We can't guarantee them anything until their plat comes to you guys. So, in their mind, I may have to put in a sidewalk.
So 120-foot wide lot comes before us, and at the end of the day, we have the say on that as to.
You wouldn't now, but you will if you change that.
Yeah.
It would still be our discretion. I understand you can't tell them, hey, they may or they may not. You can't tell them definitively, but at least you would think practical business person would say, I'm going to find out for sure. And if it's a deal killer, then I won't do it. I won't buy it.
The cost to draw up a plat is thousands of dollars, and they're going to have to draw up that plat just to get an answer from you.
Yeah. Good point. Something to think about. Okay, my second point was how many, in the recent period, how many large lot developments have we had relative to small lot developments? What's the trend?
The last large lot, 120-foot front foot lot would have been what, Aubrey? Maybe would have been 10 years back?
Looks like Sterling Ridge Estates Creekwood, but Creekwood started in 2009.
I guess my point is that
Where's Creekwood?
Jacobs.
At the end of
Jacobs Landing on the back of,
Parts of Friendswood have it.
I guess my point is this really going to be a big issue?
Could be.
People coming to us with big lots to be developed, that we're going to force them to put a sidewalk on. If there are not a lot of them being developed, we don't want to discourage it, but
Right.
what's the reality? Is it going to, are we going to be seeing a lot of large lot developments? We're going to force it? Are we just talking about something that's just
It's
never going to happen?
We've had development meetings on the property, adjacent to Sun Meadow, the old golf course, the property out near the gun range, and there's one other large residential area.
You said some meadow?
Sun Meadow, yeah, the old golf course. And all of we've had, meetings for years on those, and they all want to come in with PUDs because they want smaller than 90-foot lots.
Okay, smaller. So
Yeah,
you're saying going
our
smaller. I was
minimum
going to
is
say, I
90,
thought that was small.
and they want smaller than that.
And the
So-
only, truly significant size subdivision was Jacobs Landing. And prior to that, maybe 5 years before that, I can't think of what it would have been, but one or two lot subdivisions, aren't really, I think, what we're aiming at here. I think we're aiming at the 25 lot subdivision. Jacobs Landing would have been kind of the last of the Mohegans from that standpoint, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we did your research for you, so you had it in your backup material. So the subdivisions that are highlighted in gray, I'm sorry, I made that note backwards, yeah. The ones that are in gray had more, 5 lots or more. And then, so the ones that are in white had, 4 lots or less. So and then the date that they were, started or platted is on the left. And then the number of lots and acreage and whether or not they had open ditches. So yeah, Jacobs Landing, and then before that, substantial subdivision was Sterling Ridge Estates in 2007.
And here's the thing, and this is a little bit of a marketing thing, but I think it's a good data point to take. Jacobs Landing was a dismal failure. The original developer went bankrupt with it. The bank that took it over went under with it. It's been through 3 hands, and it's tied just to the raw economics of that. The smaller you cut those lots, the more likely you are to have success, the greater the profit margin, and that's why people don't do this any longer. Land has just gotten too costly.
I guess. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I guess I was going to ask the question. So, do you see, are we in a turning point in moving from a community that values the larger estate size lot to a community that wants to move to safe pedestrian traffic, wherever. And then if we want to move towards safe pedestrian traffic, what's the plan to get there? Where's the highest priority place to begin to evaluate?
I think just to make a comment about that, it seems like, changing the ordinance here, it has some merit, and, we could argue about it for a long time. To me, it doesn't sound like it's going to be a game changer. I understand stop the bleeding, and we may or may not propose that, but I think the bigger issue is, how do we really tackle the big issue, which is, let's get some sidewalks in existing developments, and, or, around our schools or whatever. That's the bigger issue. And what you said, if we want to take it to council about changing the ordinance, they're going to say, don't waste our time. But if we come with a bigger proposal focused on the bigger issue.
And that's just, the whole issue of just viability of this before council. I think I can pretty much guarantee you, if you go to council and say that we want to make an ordinance change that will have the effect of funneling developers toward the option of smaller curb and gutter sidewalked lots and precluding the likelihood of the larger estate type lots, I don't think that will have legs. I really don't. But that's not to say we shouldn't, if everybody wants to pursue it, but I've listened to them a lot of times, that's always, been where they have fallen on it. And it's not that we can't spend a bullet and run something up the flag, but you need to recognize as an advisory group, we only get one or two good bullets per year. And when we spend one, we want to make sure, that they count.
Make it count.
So, did I get this, that you don't think this one's worth pursuing? Let me ask this question then, perhaps, rather than put you on the spot. Does everybody have enough information that a motion could be made to approve it or not, and be done with the subject?
Yeah,
I could propose a motion. I don't mind making it, but
I think if maybe we separated the two items,
Yeah.
Changing the ordinance going forward, maybe, get a consensus, on that. And then getting a consensus on, if we want to do more research on bus transportation and sidewalks in relation to where there is no, bus transportation, then we could move forward and focus, our research in that aspect. So we could, just kind of get a consensus on both issues.
consensus, should it be a motion?
Should we do a motion? It's discussion and possible action, so we can do a motion.
I'm glad to make a motion.
Okay, before you make your motion, if we make a motion here to amend this ordinance and take it to council, I would just ask, are we prepared to discuss the impacts of this motion in terms of economical development wise and all that, or are we just making a motion without having all of that information? I would hate to see us take an ordinance change forward to council without having done a lot of homework and laying it out, what it's going to do to future development and what the potential cost could be to the developers, and it might be just a little premature to make that kind of a
and the value gained, as well as the unintended consequences of that funneling.
Can I make a suggestion? Can we just, for the ordinance change, table it now until we tackle the bigger issue and make it a motion to approve both the ordinance change and how we're going to propose the capital? Because sending that up there by itself is...
I agree not sending it up there by itself. How quickly does it have to be sent to council once we approve it?
It doesn't.
That's it.
At this point, if we just got consensus, to move forward and to keep spending time on this, even at our level, then if it's something that we are going to need to get valid, research for, And if everybody's on board, then staff would be more than happy to move forward with research. But if it's not a consensus, I mean, we can't go to the council anyways. So I think we need a consensus just to move forward.
I would like to ask the Commissioner's initial question. Commissioner, I think that your concern was the impact that striking this one sentence, this exemption. The only thing that I see, and city employees correct me, the only thing that I believe it changes is the automatic approval of being exempt from having to put sidewalks in. Option 2 gives them the planning and zoning would have to prove the exemption of sidewalks thereafter by exercising option 2 or exercising option 5. So I don't think we've stifled development, and we've told large development or large plots they can't come in. I don't believe by striking that one, but we're stopping them automatically bypassing us.
Well, again, when a developer comes in with a proposal and they go off and they plat it and all that, they're gonna have to know in advance whether or not they're gonna have to put in sidewalks or whatever, because they're gonna spend a lot of money, lay out a lot of money to their architects and surveyors and all that to put these plats together. That's
I think the concern, first of all, Arnold's got.
I just had an observation for the commission. I think from an open meeting standpoint, it's a fairly close judgment call as to whether this particular agenda language really gives you the ability to make a recommendation on a text change to an ordinance. My strong suggestion is if that's the direction you want to go in, that your agenda clearly reference the ordinance as you have done on all prior ordinances that come before you, that you recommend text changes to go to council. There's always been a specific reference to the section of the Code of Ordinances. The public has been given greater visibility and notice that there, in fact, that you are discussing and deliberating and making a recommendation on a text change to the ordinance. Again, this may or may not be close enough from an open meeting standpoint, but I just strongly recommend that you follow past practice, and that is to give the public specific notice that you are sending a text change on a specific code section to the council.
And to address something Ron said earlier, I don't believe there's anyone on this commission who wants to put pedestrians in harm's way. You know, I don't think as a community we're moving that way, and I certainly would expect that would be true of all the commissioners. So, you know, and I don't think you think that either, but you asked the question and I wanted to answer it because I don't believe that you know, exists here.
And I understand what Arnold said, but can we each give our opinion as to whether or not we want to continue the ordinance change conversation?
Yeah, that is.
I would like to do that if we can.
And you can do that as an informal poll.
Right, that's what I was kind of thinking. They let Kevin do that. I've seen it.
You can just see what your consensus is
Okay.
and see if it's enough for you to continue working.
Would we like to continue this conversation and maybe with some additional time to think about it?
Dave, I think we should continue the conversation, and I think it's worth understanding better. I do think we have a pedestrian sidewalk problem in the city of Friendswood. My concern is though that we don't go charging at windmills, that we have, you know, we have a well thought out proposal, and if we're going to change ordinances, we understand what they're going to impact. And we can maybe even quantify that to council. And then if that includes capital improvement plans and all those other types of things on down the line, there are a lot of things aren't within the scope of our commission. But the things that are within the scope of our commission, I think we ought to spend a lot of time on and understanding and having a compelling reason to ask council to make a change.
Rich, where are you at on this?
So I think we should continue the discussion, not bring this up for motion to vote on just changing this ordinance now, because this is a diminishing return, this particular ordinance. I think it carries more weight if you can bring them together, which would be the capital improvements with the change in the ordinance, because when you're going to ask developers to put a sidewalk in, demand that they put a sidewalk in, at least you would be able to say, look, we're gonna put new sidewalks in all around you. We want you to put your sidewalk in. So I think together it makes more sense, and I think it at some point, we should put this in action, but I think we need the capital improvements proposal well thought out, like Craig said. So my suggestion, we just continue the discussion right now.
Well, I've only been in the city for the last 10 years, and I guess I don't understand what it is we're trying to fix. I'd like to see what the statistics are with regard to the children that are walking or the pedestrians that are walking in the city of Friendswood who are in danger. I think that piece is missing. We're talking about changing something here, but I don't think it's going to have a huge impact. I'm kind of where you are, and I'm just a bit confused about what we're doing.
Okay. Rhonda?
I believe that the ordinance change isn't worth our time. I don't believe it accomplishes significantly enough towards the improvement of pedestrian access in the city. I'm all for continuing the conversation with regard to capital improvement, and do we believe we are a community that's moving towards more pedestrian activity access? So I'd be more than willing to continue that conversation. I too would like, the public concern that we talked about, I would like to observe. I haven't observed that. And then, as far as the transfer, so I think more information is needed even as we go down the capital improvement path. So that's where I am.
And I like what you're saying. I mean, we can all just poll our neighbors. What's been your experience with this between now and perhaps another meeting? Tony?
I think that the reason we have the Roberts Rules of Order is to break projects like this down into small, accomplishable sizes, and this was just one, and we're trying to bring it back into a very complex. So I think everybody has enough information, or perhaps by the next meeting we can have enough information to make a motion and say yes or no and move past it or approve it. So to the question before, or to the comment before, I did offer to bring the public in, or where could we make a public forum? And I can tell you I got a bunch of people that would love to come and say their piece about sidewalks. But I think it may be better saving that for council, because I don't think they want to do it twice or three times. That's my piece.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm more of a proponent of trying to solve the issue of children trying to walk to school, that the buses would not be picking them up. So at this point, with the information I do have, and I'm not saying there isn't additional information that would add value, but right now I don't see that the ordinance change would be that significant. I'm all about that silver bullet because we've been here for a little while. We understand that when we go to council with our recommendations, we want to really have thought it through. We want to be sure that we have a good, valid reason why we're bringing this to them, and that it's going to make a significant difference. And right now, I don't feel that this ordinance change would do that. However, I am all about the sidewalks. I would like for us to create a more safe, pedestrian-friendly community. I'm certainly for that.
Good. Well, I hear everybody's thoughts, and I think we've all said we would like to discuss this further. I would just register my biggest concern with this is I envision every developer who's thinking about an estate-sized lot getting the news that they're going to have to basically put culverts out there and a sidewalk. They crunch their numbers. They realize that it's a 15% bump in their cost to develop that lot, and we never see those plats where we get to the level of where we operate or we exercise our discretion to make them do it or not. They simply, at the outset, make a financial decision that I'm not going to bring that kind of plat because if it went against me, one, I've got all my platting expenses and I've already crunched the numbers, and that's a much thinner deal. It's a less certain trip for me to the pay window as a land developer in Friendswood. So that's really my concern, and I think that will have that funneling effect, and we won't be seeing those plats, and I think that'll be council's major concern, is that it'll have that funneling effect, and that was the headwaters of this. So to just move on, go ahead, Arthur.
I'm still saying that I'd like to see some stats from the school district, from the police, from someone that says that, I know that Friendswood is not walk friendly. I know that. But it seems to me that just the way this city was designed. And if we are moving forward to a city that's walkable, with sidewalks everywhere, then maybe that's where we need to go. But I'm not sure that's where we're going with this.
And Arbery actually did some work with our law enforcement, and I think they told us that of the 2 pedestrian car strikes that they had in the last 5-ish years, they did not feel that in either one of those cases that sidewalks would have prevented it. So anyway, but we can continue to look at this. Let's move on, if everybody's good, and we'll just decide that we're going to decide in the future. Okay, good. All right, item number 9, consideration and possible action regarding downtown district amenities.
This is all you.
You're up.
Well, my thought is that we've gone long tonight, and let's bypass this.
Okay.
All right, consideration, item 10, consideration possible action regarding future planning and zoning commission dates. Arbery, what do you have for us?
Our next regular meeting is Thursday, September 17th. And it is looking like we have a couple of zone change applications for the beginning of October, but we can decide on that first October meeting at the next meeting.
When's the next meeting, you said?
Thursday, September 17th.
I don't think I'll be.
There were several absences.
Yeah, I think, oh, you said you were going to be here though, right? Your trip changed. It's the next week after that. Okay.
Communications from the commission. Craig, you got anything for us?
Nothing, David.
Rich?
Nothing for me.
Norman? Thanks for the shirt.
We're big spenders up here.
Yeah, I love it.
Reports, council liaison.
Lucky for you, I have nothing to say. Hard to stand up.
Staff?
No, sir.
Seeing none, then
I emailed out the DRC report for August this evening, so you should have that in your inbox.
good. Thank you. All right, we stand adjourned.
I have our, yeah, I have our,
Oh, yep.
yeah, I'll be quick if that's okay. We won't drag it out too long. We're gonna go upstairs like we did last time. No? Oh, yeah, if you want. Okay.